It's not very often that I've played a game for over 18 hours and would still consider myself a newbie to it, but that's how I feel about Rogue Tower, the tower defence game with roguelike elements that feels like it's overpowered to the point where it's going to hand your ass to you constantly over and over and over again, and you've got to have skill plus RNG on your side to survive and get to the end. This is a game that is perfect for nights where I can't sleep, where I've got an overthinking brain and I just brain dump into this one because I very rarely win. When I do win, it feels like I was just as much lucky as I was actually skillful. But it's super engrossing and I can't help but keep coming back to it and trying my luck again and again and again. In Rogue Tower, you start off with your tower in a crossroads of path, basically. And you will have some money to build some basic towers. So it could be some houses that are villages that generate coins every single turn. It could be some archers. It could be much more of like a firing gun or something like that. Once you've placed down your towers, you'll then choose to expand the path in a direction, and it's up to you how you choose to expand that path. That will then trigger a new wave of enemies to come charging towards a tower, and you need to make sure your defences are in place so that you can then actually survive that wave. At the end of surviving that wave, you'll then get given a randomly generated upgrade, and this will be chosen from an overarching skill tree that you're working towards over the course of many games. And so there's an RNG factor there. There's an RNG factor in terms of, wow, the map's going to spread out. There's an RNG factor in terms of the upgrades. There's a lot of roguelike elements all going on, and they all pile on top of each other to make so many choices really crucial in how you want to play your game. What I really love about Rogue Tower is just how much of a diving off point you can change a game into for yourself. So I've seen quite a few YouTubers that are like, I'm only going to do a archers and mortar run, or I'm going to do a mana magic only run. Or they're going to use just like one path, or they're going to try a crosshair of 4 paths where they're trying to manage all different things all at once. It's entirely up to you how you constrict or restrict your own playthrough for each run, but you've got to be so careful with what it is that you're doing, because there's so many different ways that you can trip yourself up. The coins that you earn could be used to buy more towers. It could be that you use it to speed up the upgrade to the towers that are there originally. But if a tower's in a good position, it will kill enough enemies and it will actually gain XP and level itself up anyway. So do you want to spend too much coin doing that to begin with? It could be that if you're leaning into magic towers, you need to invest in different points to be able to draw the mana up to be able to actually power those magic turrets. And if those aren't generating on your map because they're part of the world around you, then you might have backed yourself into a corner that way. It could be that your towers bring a warp point for enemies very early on, and so you've got a very short path that you need to absolutely bolster with loads and loads of towers on that doesn't give you enough time to be able to kill enemies, and that could cause you a problem. It could be that your paths spiral round and round in a circle, and that makes things easier because you'll get multiple bang for your buck for each tower that you're placing in between multiple paths as they circle and go back round on themselves. It is totally random, and you are in the fate of Rogue Tower and how its RNG gods want to play with you. But this whole unlock, build, upgrade, expand, defend gameplay loop just works so well, despite the fact that it always feels like you're the David to the Goliath, really, because there's so many overwhelming odds of things that can go wrong, and they invariably will, and skill can help, but RNG certainly plays a huge part, and perhaps, if I'm being really critical, probably too much of a part. However, it's this overarching skill tree that really is the bread and butter for Rogue Tower, because as you continually unlock more and more towers, you then unlock a skill tree for that tower, and every time you die or you play Rogue Tower, you earn XP regardless of how well you've done, and you'll be able to save that up and then unlock, say you unlock the fire tower, for example. That can then increase the fire rate that comes out of that tower, so the damage that it can do. It can also extend the length of time fire is a problem for that enemy once it passes through that tower. But it could be, if you've got, say, like the archer, you could add on fire or poison depending on what you unlock through this skill tree, or slow, for example, too. And so as you unlock these elements on the overarching skill tree, that then gets added into the RNG factor at the end of every wave of enemies of a potential upgrade for your tower. So what that then does is it starts to make you focus on, do I choose a couple of towers and then really invest in them heavily so that they can become the best tower that they can possibly be, because you're constantly doing those upgrades specifically for those couple of towers over and over? Or do you upgrade several towers just broadly a little bit, but have more variety that can then bring more things to the table? And there's no particular right or wrong answer, because you're going to need to adapt to however your map is playing out for you. But again, it's just another way of causing problems for yourself and choosing the wrong way to do something sometimes. I also really love the fact that you've got like a potentially endless mode that's going on there too. I don't think it truly is endless, but you've also got the ability to choose from 1 path, 2 paths, 3 paths or 4 paths, and they just get exponentially more and more trickier as you go along, because you're trying to work out what path should I expand next, where do I then place those towers, can I get away with trying to almost stagger the enemy arrival at the towers so that you can try and then get the different defences that you're placing to cover more than one path at once, but they don't all arrive at the same time, for example. And that's kind of how I've lent into playing Rogue Tower, so that I can stagger the arrival of people and funnel them back into one path wherever possible, or at least a place where they have to go where a tower can cover multiple paths. The last thing that I talk about on this is the fact that you can go into and really customize exactly what a tower focuses on. So you can do the strongest enemy, the fastest enemy, the one that's got the weakest to fire or poison, for example, the most poisoned one, the one that's closest to death, for example, if you want to try and get rid of those types of things. And this is all super helpful too, because again, it's all around that customization, prioritization of what's going to cause you a problem, particularly when you've got some of the later waves, because it's 50 waves per run basically. You've got enemies that sometimes won't be able to be slowed or are immune to certain types of towers, so you'll need to really focus the efforts of a certain tower on a type of enemy. What that then also means is that that individual tower then gets stronger based on how much damage it's done to a certain type of enemy. So enemies come with health, armour and shield. Now each tower has its own starter multiplier where it can be more effective on a certain type of damage to an enemy, but you can choose to override that and focus on something else, which then strengthens their multiplier as that tower levels up, because it's done more damage to that type of enemy. So you can reverse engineer stuff if you need to, but it's not the most efficient way to play it. Rogue Tower is long, it's arduous, it's painful, it's going to hand your ass back to you time and time again, but it has that je ne sais quoi and replayability that just asks you to come back for one more run over and over again. I can see some players potentially getting into like a despise loop with this game because of how harsh it can be and how sometimes unfair the RNG can be too, but that's the problem with RNG games. You just have to kind of run with the punches sometimes. I will say though that there have been some mods that have been put out for this game that do smooth out the RNG, so if you do struggle with it, there are some good mods that say will always only give you a spiral path, for example, which can make the game slightly easier whilst you're doing that kind of initial levelling up and unlocking of all of those different skills over time. So do recommend those. It extends the life of the game out somewhat, but this game has no problems with longevity at all. It is one of those that you can just lose hours and hours to quite happily and still utterly fail. Written review will be over on higherplayinggames.com. Thumbs up from me. You guys take care. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane-network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.